Next, on the Boardroom, Mark McClure presents investment opportunities in a new movie.
I'll keep it short and sweet, to maybe 15 minutes tops, and then throw some stuff at me. But how this came about, and I'll get to it in a second, is as Charles alluded to, for the past 10 years, I've had the pleasure and good fortune of doing sales and marketing training and consulting all over the world. I've trained and consulted to more than 200 of the Fortune 500. Shared the stage with such people as Michael Jordan, Robert Kiyosaki, Brian Tracy, and so forth. And along the way, I've met a lot of great people. And one of these people I met was David Winters, which I'll allude to in a second. But what happened, how this came about, I was just got back from doing an event in Dubai, 2-day boot camp there on sales and marketing, and over to Thailand, David pulled me aside. And he says, "Mark, listen, I got to show you something." I said, "What is it?" He goes, "I know you just did those 2 infomercials on Fox Business Network, and that must have cost you some money, and they did pretty well." I said, "Well, yeah, but I'm still trying to recoup the costs." He goes, "I want to show you this project," and he showed me this. And I'm like, "What is it?" And after I saw it, I was just blown away. You get projects that are sent to you, and you're like, "Yeah, looks good, looks good." It blew me out of the water. I said, "I'll take it on. I haven't got 800,000 right now to throw at you, but I know once we take this thing on and it's ready, we'll get it pretty quick." So that's the point we're at right now. This is 100% ready to go. And so what I want to do right now is just go over the dynamics, the foundation of the project, and hopefully at the end, throw some advice, and maybe, who knows, you might say, want to throw some money at it. Who knows? So that's all. I'll jump in right now. And like I said, it's no more than 15 minutes, and we'll take it from there. The name of the project is East Side Story. Okay? It's pretty much Dirty Dancing meets Footloose meets The Karate Kid. Okay, that's the best way to describe it. It's written and directed by David Winters. Okay, so the synopsis, I'll go through this pretty quick. The synopsis is this. It's pretty much it's a young girl and a young guy meet each other. Both sides of the tracks, rich girl, poor girl. They meet one summer, and they meet at a resort. And during the way, music and dance take place, and at the end of the movie, it all comes together. During that time frame, there's a lot of obstacles and protagonists, but at the end, it's a feel-good love story that comes together at the end. So figure Dirty Dancing meets Footloose meets High School Musical. So let's talk, that's the synopsis of the film, but no film is worthy of a dime unless you have a good foundation behind it. You have a good director, you got a good soundtrack, and you got a good marketing behind it, and of course, a good cast. Once you have all that, you've got yourself a home run. And so that's what this film has. It's 100% ready to go. So let's talk about the director. Director's David Winters. If any of you ever watched the movie West Side Story, he starred in West Side Story. He was Arab. West Side Story won 10 Academy Awards. Okay, so he starred in West Side Story. Since that time, David's produced and directed 80 feature films. Let's see if this keeps working. Okay. Over 200 TV shows, which included, I'm sure you've seen Frank Sinatra specials on the way back when. Barbra Streisand had shows on the air. The Monkees, he produced their first 2 seasons. The Monkees, they did their world tour. He's done a lot of stuff, 80 feature films. He's got 25 award nominations, 14 wins, and those are the awards that he's racked up. 6 Emmy nominations. And he's directed and produced films for such stars as Paul Newman, Josh Brolin, Michael Jackson, Elvis, Barbra Streisand, so forth and so on. So the director for the film we have is pretty well adept at what he's doing. Okay? That's him with Barbra Streisand. I'd like to show some pictures, little credibility. That's A Star Is Born. He choreographed that whole film. That's him with Paul Newman on the set of Paul Newman. Obviously, this is back in the 70s. On the set with Donnie Marie. That's him on the set with the Monkees. That's him with Diana Ross. He did 2 of her tours. And of course, on the set with Elvis, he did 4 of his films and choreographed all of 4 of Elvis's films. So the guy knows what he's doing. So that's the director behind the film. Now let's talk about the music and the soundtrack. The gentleman that did the music for this film, if you don't know him, you'll know his work. His name's David Foster. Okay, David. He's got 47 Grammy nominations, so he's doing our music. This is the guy that's putting together the soundtrack and dealing with the artists. He's won 16 Grammy wins. He's got 16 Grammy wins, along with 47 nods. If you watch the Bodyguard movie, he did that whole soundtrack. He's done Mariah Carey, Michael Jackson, Madonna, Chicago, on and on and on. A simple Google of David Foster, and you'll see the gentleman's track record. He's the highest paid music producer, writer in Hollywood. He gets $40,000 to $100,000 per song. And again, he's put together 3 songs of ours already. In addition to David, he's got 3 Academy Award nominations and a Golden Globe. In addition to David Foster, we have 3 other Grammy winners on the soundtrack, and then 15 up-and-coming stars. The soundtrack is done, so it's completed. Universal told us that the soundtrack will probably do more than the movie. That's fine, but it's just a nice little caveat to have in our back pocket. But the soundtrack is done, 100%. We could launch it today. Now, here's the best part. A film is only as good as its marketing, okay? You have to have good marketing behind it. You can have a great story, a great director, but if you haven't got the marketing, it's going to go nowhere. You know, you can have viral marketing, that's fine. YouTube, that's fine. But a picture like this, if you want to get the awards, you want to get the box office, the DVDs, you have to have a marketing powerhouse behind you, and we have that. This gentleman recently signed on as executive producer for the film. If you don't know him, you'll know his work. Nigel Lithgow, he's our marketing partner. Okay, Nigel owns American Idol. Okay, he's the sole owner of American Idol. He also owns So You Think You Can Dance. All right, he owns both of these shows. And so keep going. All right, so American Idol is the #1 TV show in the United States. 10 consecutive seasons, 30 million viewers. And he's going to bring more than $10 million in marketing power to the film. Now, you're probably wondering, well, why is American Idol partnering with us on the film? Why Nigel Lithgow? David's from the UK and did a lot of dance, as you know, with West Side Story and all these other works. And Nigel comes from a dance background, and he's very close with David. And he liked West Side Story, but more than that, he loved Elvis Presley. And he's actually dating Priscilla Presley. That's how much he loves Elvis Presley. So he's a big fan of Elvis. And so David met with Nigel 2 weeks ago, and Nigel says, once the film is done, and once it's completed, we'll take the film, right before it's ready to hit the box office, and we'll promote it on American Idol. Whatever you need, David, we'll promote it on American Idol. The reason being that they're going to promote this film is the next slide. The cast for the film, which is a musical dance film, the cast is made up, the leading cast will be made up entirely of American Idol and So You Think You Can Dance contestants. And I should change that. It's going to be made up of the winners and the runners-up. David Winters told me tonight, make sure you let people know it's the winners and runners-up. So that's going to be our cast. The leading cast will be American Idol and So You Think You Can Dance. So that's where Nigel is excited. He's going to promote his shows, and he's going to make a boatload of money with the film. So that's the cast. And so that's where we're at. Now, all of that's in place, and we're ready to start shooting June 4th. But, you know, so when people look at this, this is the first presentation I've made tonight. I got a slew of investor presentations for the next 2 weeks. So when people look at this, obviously they're going to say, well, for an $800,000 budget, you're obviously going to make that back 20 times before you hit the box, before a DVD is even sold, before tickets even sold. And we know that. We know it's going to make money. That's not the issue. But a lot of people say, but there's still risks. It's the movie business, you know, there's risks in the movie business. So obviously this film, the risks are pretty much wiped out, but I'm going to still go over the risk factors because that's a question you'll probably ask. It's a question most people will ask. So let's talk about the 3 risk factors with any film, okay? The first risk factor with any film, will it get completed, okay? Are you going to finish the film? The second risk factor with any film is, great, will it get distributed? You can't make money unless it's distributed, okay? The third thing that you have to have is, okay, great, that's all fine and dandy, will it make money? Those are the 3 criteria for any film, all right? So obviously I think we've met those 3 criteria, but let's go over each one individually just so we can, you know, put it in writing. The first part, completion. David Winters has done 80 films, but 48 he's done personally, okay? For the past 25 years, he's done a lot of B movies, done a lot of studio stuff that he got paid big money for, but he's done a lot of movies on his own that he put his own money into or brought investors into. So he's done 48 of those by himself, okay? All 48 films that he's done, he's completed at or under budget and on time. So every film that David Winters has taken on, he's completed and he's finished up at budget and on time. So we know it's going to get completed if historical evidence is anything. Distribution. Will it get distributed? Well, obviously with American Idol attached and the stars that have American Idol and So You Think You Can Dance with their big following, every distributor is going to jump at this. But let's still go over the track record of the people involved. All 48 films that David has done have received either domestic, international, and video distribution, or all three. Okay? For example, his last 3 films were all distributed and sold to Sony. One of the films you may know, hopefully, if you've heard of Planet 51, The Rock, was, he sold it to Sony for $30 million when he had Handmade Films. And he bought Handmade Films from George Harrison of the Beatles before George died. And then he sold Handmade Films, I think, 2 years ago. But before he sold Handmade Films, he produced Planet 51. That was the last film he sold for $30 million to Sony. So his last 3 films have been distributed, in addition to all 48. In addition to selling the film to the distributor, we'll also be hitting all the festivals. Sundance, Cannes, Toronto. So we'll hit all the foreign distributors as well. Okay. Lastly, profitability. Here's the best part. All right. Profitability. Will it make money? What's the track record of the people involved with this film? Okay. All 48 films, and I have the sheet in my car, but I'll show it up on the screen. All 48 films that David has produced have been profitable. He's never lost money. Okay. His lowest performer, and I'll show you up on the screen here, and you can verify this. His bomb, his worst film ever, returned 15% to the investors. That was his bomb, worst film ever. His best performance performed 207%. That was a film he did with Josh Brolin. Josh Brolin's first film ever, called Thrashin'. You can look it up on the internet. Did quite well at the box office. And how Josh got the film was he didn't want Josh. He wanted Johnny Depp when Johnny Depp was just coming up, and he pushed for Johnny Depp. They said Johnny Depp will never be a star, and so that's exactly what happened. And so David says, I'll work with Josh Brolin just because he's Barbra Streisand's stepkid, or whatever you want to call it. So that's how Josh Brolin got the start. But after this film, David quit, I think it was Paramount, and went on his own because he said, they screwed up with Johnny Depp. But that's the film that did 207%, so it obviously did okay. And again, that's up on the screen, and I can show you afterwards. But those are all the films that he's done, the cost, the gross, the profits, and the rate of return on the side over there. So we calculated all this. We did a lot of research the past month putting this all together. His track record, these are B films. That's what he's done. His net profit for those 48 films. I know it's not a lot, but again, these are not including the big studio pictures he did for Paramount and Miramax. These are only his films. Net profit on all 48 was $34 million. All right, so his revenue per film was $1.3 million. His expenses were $666. His net profit was $712,000. All right, so his return on invested capital was about 107% on all 48 films. It's going to be tough to find a real estate investment or anything of that magnitude that returns that type of profit. But people look at this and they say, films don't make money. Every film, 98% make money. It's all the accounting that goes on behind you that lets you know that they didn't make money. It's just funny accounting. But the 107 came from DVD sales. It came from cable. It came from soundtracks. It wasn't just the box office. When you calculate it all together, that's the return that he looked at. Any water? Huh? Cottonmouth. So as with taking into account everything, David's got a. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. So he's got a 100% success rate. It'd be tough to find that in any business. And no David Winters film has ever lost money. But knowing that, so let's just assume you had none of the other variables that we talked about earlier. All right, that's still a pretty good track record. But let's add in the variables that he has. Now you have a guy that has a track record of success. He's never lost money. All 48 of his films have been completed and distributed. But now add in these variables. Okay, add these back in. Okay, he's got a marketing partners and a cast of American Idol and So You Think You Can Dance. Now you're combining that with a track record of that, now with one of the most powerful marketing vehicles on earth, All right, that's not a bad partnership. Add in that variable. Add in the fact you have David Foster attached doing the music. All right, David Foster has never been attached to a film that lost money. He's got a reputation he has to uphold. He didn't take on this project lightly. He likes David, he likes the concept, but he didn't take it lightly. He wants to make sure this film is going to be a success, just like he did with The Bodyguard and a slew of other films. Because if it's a flop, he looks bad, just like Nigel Lithgow will look bad. So these guys did not take their decisions lightly. So let's talk about understanding the economics. So we've talked about the deal, we've talked about the people that are involved, the foundation. How do you make money in films? People always ask that question. How do you make money in films? What I'm going to show right now is this. I'm not going to sit here and say it's going to do 200 million. I'm not going to say it's going to do 100 million. I'm not going to do that at all, okay? That is dreaming. If it does, fantastic. What I'm going to show you is what I know for a fact that the film will do, based on conversations with Sony, based on what we'll get before a ticket is sold, based on what we'll get before a DVD is sold. I'll show you what I know for a fact what we'll make before it hits the box office. If it does big numbers, well, God bless it. But I'm not going to sit here and say that it will, because it might not. But I'm going to show you numbers that we know that it will do based on historical evidence and conversations with distributors and so forth. So let's talk about the economics. Okay? What you see here, and I'll explain them, is what you see is worldwide sales projections. Now, what that means, these are not box office numbers. This is what sales agents will pay for the film. Okay? These are not box office numbers, and I'll blow them up for you a little bit. Okay? So for example, you look down the bottom there. These are the 48 markets or 49 markets in the world that buy films. That's all there is. There's 49 markets. So when a film is made, there's 49 markets that will buy that film. Not 60, not 50, it's 49. Okay? And these are the 49 markets. The United States makes up 50% of all box office revenue. We're the biggest box office revenue stream in the world. We're the biggest. The rest are there as you see it. Now, that number down below that you see is $48,134,000. This is after extensive research with people involved with the film, talking to sales agents, talking about who we have involved with the film. This is the number that came back on the high end. I'm not saying we're going to do that because we're not going to do 48 million, but that's what sales agents would pay for the film. All right? That's if every sales agent paid the maximum amount that we've been told. Then you have the low end, okay? That's the worst case scenario we've been told. $3 million from the US distributor, and then all the rest. So let's talk about worst case scenarios. I'm not going to talk about best case, we're going to talk about worst case scenarios. So that's a worst case we can expect from sales agents when our film goes to market, when we try to sell it to the agents, which David has relationships all over the world. He's got relationships with all the sales agents. Now let's talk about this for a second. Let's define how this works for the investors and the film itself and the partners involved. Worst case scenario, let's break this down. What would happen is this. I'm using the worst case scenario in the United States as the $3 million partner. All right, we sell to a distributor, let's say Sony. Sony's already said that they will buy it. We don't know what the price is yet, but we already know there'll be a buyer. But let's say Sony comes in at the $3 million mark. They say, okay, we'll buy it, and they offer us $3 million. What happens is Sony will be in a negotiation. And so Sony will say, okay, we get the first $15 million in the domestic box office. So what happens is we get our $3 million, okay, the partnership. Sony gets to go out there in the marketplace and collect their first $15 million, $20 million. It's all negotiation. That $15 million goes towards paying us, their profit margin and marketing costs. So they get the first $15 million, okay? So what would happen is this. The LLC gets the $3 million from Sony, okay? The investment's $800,000 into the film, so the investors get their money back first. So the $3 million comes in, the $800,000 gets to the investors, so they get their money back 100%. So they're taken care of, all right, which leaves $2 million for the production and the investors to split, okay? Because what happens is the $800,000 gets the investors, or however many there are, 50% of the profits in the film for life. The soundtrack, the profits, everything. All right, so that's how it works. And the production team, which would be myself, Nigel, Dave, and the rest, we get the other 50%. So that's how it works. So $2 million comes in, 50% to the investors. So the investors get their money back. We just sold to Sony. They get their investment back. Then there's $1 million that go to them as well. We keep $1 million, they get $1 million. So that's 125% return on invested capital just from the Sony deal. Okay, this is before foreign distribution. Okay, and just like I said up there, David's last film sold for $30 million. Okay. Now, why is the return on investment so high, and why is the budget so low? Well, this is a film that should be made for between $4 and $10 million. The reason being is David Winters is taking his on the back end. The cast, American Idol, they're all taking theirs on the back end. So a lot of people are taking back end profits because I know it's going to be such a huge hit. So we've been very fortunate with that part. Marketing is the most expensive part with any film. But again, American Idol's absorbing that marketing cost. So we're sitting here able to make a film for $800,000, which would normally cost between 4 and 10. Okay, so that's why the budget is so low. So wrapping up here, we only got a few more slides. Let's put this into an example. All right, before a movie ticket is even purchased, okay, distributor receives their first $15 million after they pay our $3 million guarantee. Okay, the revenue then reverts back to the LLC. So once they hit their $15 million mark, now we are now in equal position with Sony. All right, so Sony gets 50% of the profits that come in at this point. The LLC gets 50% of the profits. We're now equal partners with them. Okay, so we got that. Now let's talk about quickly foreign sales. Now this is before even foreign sales. Okay, so now you've got the $3 million from Sony. Now let's assume the worst case for foreign sales. Remember I said we're going to get $7.8 million, 3 from domestic. That leaves $4.8 million for foreign sales. All right, which is a joke, but again, I want to do worst case scenario. That's $2.4 million now from foreign sales that are now going to be split between the investors. Actually, $2.4 million that go to the investors. We keep half of that. All right. So before a movie ticket is even sold, okay, the total return to the investors would be $3.4 million. Okay, before a ticket is even sold. All right. Obviously, you take out the $800,000. All right, that's through sales to foreign distributors, and that's from sales to Sony. Okay, they're going to now go out and put the film in the box office. Okay, so if the movie bombs, if it's the worst film that's ever, like Ishtar or something like that, everyone's made money. Okay, maybe except for the distributors, but the investors have made a huge return. However, if the thing does take off, we have to sit back and let the distributors ride. Then we catch them on the way up. So if it rides, we should have taken more up front. But that's a risk you take. But we've really covered our risk on the front end. And again, with the tie-ins with David Foster and American Idol, these distributors can be running at it. Okay. Now, feasible box office scenario. This is what the research we've done. So what's the box office scenario going to be? And let's say use domestic. Let's stay away from foreign. Let's use domestic. Domestic box office. Let's say it does $60 million at the box office. $15 million to the distributor. That leaves $22.5 million to the LLC. $22.5 million to the distributor. All right. And again, that's split with the LLC. That's all in domestic box office. That's if it really takes off. Now, what am I using for examples? I should probably give some examples. High School Musical did not get theatrically released. It was straight to DVD. All right, straight to DVD. Did $127 million at the box office. No names attached, just straight to DVD. All right, that's a film along the same lines as ours. All right, $127 million. I'm going to give you some comparables. High School Musical 2. All right, did $120 million. And then High School Musical 3 did $251 million, and then DVD $60 million. Okay? So High School Musical 3, along the same lines as us, with no stars, did $360 million at the box office and DVD sales. Fame, $77 million, 82. Footloose, 80. Okay? And then lastly, Save the Last Dance, $131 million. Hairspray, $306 million with DVD sales and box office. And then finally, this is our comparable. These are the guys that will compete with us. This is the film that's identical to ours. Step It Up. And if you haven't heard of it, I don't blame you. No one's ever heard of Step Up. If you heard, okay, I never heard of it. David talked about this film, and I'm like, I never heard it. He's like, you've never heard of Step Up? I'm like, no. He's like, Mark, it did $51 million. I'm sorry, 166. I keep forgetting worldwide. The second one did 172. Okay, I'm like, wow. All right, with no name actors. Okay, so those are the comparable films that are comparable to us, all right, without the talent, without the marketing power that we have. Okay, so let's talk about East Side Story then. Leading cast made up entirely of American Idol and So You Think You Can Dance. Soundtrack by David Foster. I'll flip it through this for you. So, director with a director that's done music and dance films all his life. 10 Academy Award winner, West Side Story. And our marketing alliance, I can't emphasize this enough, our marketing alliance with American Idol and So You Think You Can Dance, and their 40 million viewers. So we have all that. They didn't, and they still did over $100 million at the box office. Okay. Now, additional revenue streams. Once it's run its course at the box office, what do we have? Well, we have additional revenue streams. DVD sales, video sales, premium channels. Now you have HBO coming. You have Showtime writing you checks and royalties. So that starts kicking in. Redbox. What's the other one there? Netflix. That's just another income stream of $20, $30 million after the box office. But that's not even the best part of the film that everyone's excited about. The soundtrack. All right? I'm not going to read all that. But with David Foster and 3 other Grammy Award winners and 50 of the top up-and-coming music stars in the world, this soundtrack is already done. We're being told by everyone the soundtrack will eclipse the film in revenue. And then there's the tour that these guys do. So it's just, the way this is set up is monumental. That's why I jumped on board with it. Okay? Then you have iTunes and Raps. I could go on and on and on. Okay, so let's finish up the worst case scenario. Before one ticket is sold, before one DVD is sold, and before one soundtrack CD is even sold. Okay? Investors return on $3.4 million return to the investors after they recoup their money in full. That's $2.6 million net return on $800,000 before one ticket is even sold. So wrapping up, this is the last slide. How does this work? How's the formation of it? East Side Story, no, it won't be. It has been. It's been formed as a Delaware LLC, right? The registered agent for the LLC is incorporated as the company corporation of Delaware. Okay. The LLC will be capitalized, as you can see here, for $800,000. We're selling 32 membership units in $25,000 blocks. Each unit represents 1.56% lifetime profit participation in the film. The 32 units will represent 50% profit participation in the film, and investors will receive 100% of the profits until paid back in full, and then they'll receive 50% of the profits equal to the producers on even Steven for life. And all funds will be escrowed at Citibank until $250,000 is raised, which should be by the end of next week with the meetings we have. And then once that benchmark is hit, we go into pre-production, and we start shooting June 4th in Miami. It's a 5-week production. We go into post. That's 12 weeks. Once post is done, we take it to Sony. We take it to the distributors. They get a first look. They make us an offer. We make our money back. And then we go to the festivals, and we take it to the box office and market it to American Idol and so forth. So that's in a nutshell. I try to make it as quick as I can. And if you got any questions or so forth, feedback, love to hear it.
I don't understand how you can have the soundtrack before you have the movie.
Well, he went ahead and did it. The whole soundtrack is completed. Actually, I have it on my computer, but I'm not going to play it for you tonight. But the soundtrack is completed. He's been working on this for the past year. And so he wanted to bring on names in the soundtrack that help sell the film. So he's doing everything in unison. So yeah, the soundtrack's 100% complete.
That would indicate the casting is all done and everything else.
Yep, casting's done. Casting 100% complete. The film is, if it could be shot tomorrow. We're just getting the dates solidified for the locations. We got a couple of helicopters that we're getting for some of the shots. But yeah, we could start shooting tomorrow. Everything's done. Yep. Just we have to do the pre-production and get the crew down there and set up the sites and stuff. But yeah. Yep.
Wow. How old is this gentleman and what state of health is he in?
Perfect health. David Winters, that's a good question. He's been around a while. He's 72 years old. Yeah, he's in good health. Yeah. That's the first thing I wondered too when I took it on.
Because this is a lot of work.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, but he loves what he does. Yeah, he loves it. He just, the movie Teddy Bear just came out, got won Academy Award for Best Short Film. He's in that film. He helped produce that film, so he's still acting. Yeah. Yeah.
The movie industry is really tight. It seems like the people that you're talking about would have their friends that would put all the money into it that are already in the business. Why are you talking to us?
It's a good question. Give an example. None of these guys put the money into their films. George Clooney just had to raise $300,000. What's that movie that he just got nominated for, Descendants? The film needed another $300,000. Rather than him putting the money in, because they've got so many deals going on, they can't spread themselves too thin. He went on a dog and pony show, giving to Germany, to you name it, trying to convince investors to put another $300,000 into the film. So what happens is they have so many deals going on, they can't possibly be in all these films. And Nigel, we didn't want to tell Nigel, can you invest in the film? He's already giving us all this marketing. At the end of the day, he's probably going to say, well, geez, it's my film. What else do you want me to do?
What percent do they get?
That's David's back end. I think Nigel's going to get an executive producer credit, maybe 10%. But it's pretty much a great showcase for his talent on the screen, the big screen. Yeah.
I'm kind of with Charles's question. If he's had 48 winners and he doesn't want to invest in it, I don't know why the heck I would.
Yeah, he's got a lot of money into the film right now. He's invested $100,000 of his cash to date. Yeah.
You're out of my league. This is one I'll watch.
I guess you answered the question I had, is why are they not investing their own money into it? But
yeah, I mean, you look at those guys like Mark Wahlberg and George Clooney. Those guys, they figure they're bringing the talent to the table. Other people can put the money in, so that's what they're bringing to the table, and they figure that's worth their 50%.
Can I ask?
Sure.
It's American Idol and
So You Think You Can Dance.
The past winners, not the new shows coming up.
Yeah, past winners like maybe last year, the year before. Yeah,
Last couple of years, but it's not the one that's running now.
No, because that's still fresh. So the last 2 years, and the winners have a huge following. So once it hits the box office, just from their following alone, we know we'll do quite well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you confirm for me that the $800,000 number was the number necessary to start and complete production?
That's correct. Yeah. Once the $800,000 is put in, it's on a drawdown basis, and obviously investors, it's completely transparent. With 5 days notice, they can step in and say, let me see the checks, let me see the bills, let me see the invoices. But yeah, the $800,000 number, and David's done budgets galore, and so has Nigel. We'll take it from start to finish.
And would you confirm that the LLC capitalization that was, I think, your last screen on the PowerPoint was also $800,000?
Well, that's what will happen is we're going to take the 32 units, $25,000 a piece, and capitalize it at $800,000, and those funds will be used from production from beginning to end. But the biggest part of any film is marketing, of course, and most films' budgets are half marketing budget. So that's when American Idol steps in with their $10 million of power. So that's why the budget has been, it is what it is.
So it would be correct, or would it be correct to conclude that the outside investors are taking all of the financial risk?
Yeah, they're taking, they own 50% of the film and they're putting up the money, yeah.
I'm sorry, am I going too many questions?
No, not at all.
If production is not able to be completed for $800,000, does your LLC instrument allow for capital calls? And if so, are those capital calls mandatory at the risk of forfeiture of units for failure to meet a capital call?
There would be no capital calls in the LLC structure. And again, if it gets to that point around, and that's why I showed up there that David's produced 48 films, he's come in under budget or at budget. But let's say it does happen at the $600,000 mark or halfway through, we think that there might be a problem, we'll get a completion bond. Completion bonds are expensive, but we'll pay for it to make sure that the film does get done on time. So that will happen. But I asked David, I said, will we have a completion bond? He says, I've never had to. I've finished everything on time. But if we get through the project and people are nervous, we'll get a completion bond that will guarantee that the film does get done. And there's no cash calls.
One last question.
Sure.
What does taking 100% of the financial risk by the investors as a group in terms of control of the venture?
Well, number one, they have it's completely transparent. But as far as creative control, we leave that up to Nigel and the other experts. It's like investing in a stock. I mean, you invest in the stock, but you have no creative control over it. You just you hope it does well. Here, the only way we take care of the risk is you get 100% of the profits before any of us make a dime. All right, so we don't see a thing till you get paid your money back in full. So that's one way of alleviating the risk. Yes.
I have a question.
Sure.
There's just so many numbers up on the slides, and
I know we're a time crunch, that's why.
Well, I'm reading as fast as I could, thanks
Sure.
to Howard. On one of the slides, I saw that there was a $3 million profit, and then you take out $800,000 to give back to the investor.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference of that sum was $2 million.
2.2.
Okay, I did not see the
Yeah,
point two.
yeah, it's 2.2,
Okay.
yeah.
Your slide says
There was
two.
your
Oh.
slide says 2, and there's missing $200,000.
That's
Well,
2.2.
that's Hollywood.
That's Hollywood accounting. Yeah, yeah.
Mark pocketed that.
Yeah. So what will happen is once the film is complete, we know Sony will come forward. We're hoping for $5 million. We'll probably get $3 million. That $3 million comes back to us. The investors get their money back, and then we split it up. So, yeah.
Other questions?
Some commentary and a question.
Sure.
Some of this we discussed before we came into the room. I've been involved as an investor or a producer in a number of Broadway show productions.
Yep.
We were talking a little bit earlier over dinner. Spider-Man has been out there. It's one of the biggest fiascos that Broadway has ever seen. One of the it is undoubtedly the most expensive show ever produced on Broadway. Originally was scheduled at $60 million before it opened. They had delayed openings. They have never officially opened. It's still officially in previews. They're up to $75 million invested. It would have to run for about 52 years to break even. And this is a show produced and invested by some of the wealthiest people in the world in businesses that they know about. U2, the band, and Bono did all of the music for it and heavily invested. Julie Taymor, who is famous for Lion King and was the producer and director of that, still running, has been running for 7 or 8 years. U2, Bono, Julie put in almost all of that first $60 million and then had to go back out for more. And there's no way, God's earth, that it can ever possibly recoup.
Of course not. Yeah.
How do you take that kind of a situation, understanding that's a Broadway show, but a big budget, especially for Broadway.
Yeah.
Not very much by Hollywood standards or some of the blockbusters that are out there. Those creative talent, God bless them, they've got a lot of talent. Fortunately, they have a lot of money.
Right.
Why are those people willing to invest in it, and your David Winters and your Nigels are not willing to go out there for a relatively paltry sum of $800,000?
Yeah. Well, again, at this point, David has put about $100,000 of his own money into it. So I can say that he's got it to the point it has. He's called in a lot of favors to get it to the point that it has. David's not a rich man, so he's not this multi-millionaire guy. He's okay, but to write a check for $800,000, no, he can't do it. But he's well off. Nigel, like we said, he's bringing to the table a lot. And to finally say, Nigel, one more thing, can you stroke a check? He's just going to be like, why don't I just take the whole movie? So we just wanted to push him as far as we could, and that's as far as we could push him. So we're at the point now that the people involved, the stretches, we push them as far as we could. So now we're looking for the $800,000 to complete it. Again, David's not a rich man. He's comfortable, but he can't stroke a check for $800,000. But he's gone into his pockets, funded it to where we're at, getting the music soundtrack done, getting Nigel on board, getting a lot of the upfront work done. He really put in some cash and time. And now we're at the point we can actually start shooting. So I think, he's done quite a bit to this point. He's really invested a lot of his heart and money into this. But with Nigel, he's just giving a lot as far as marketing is concerned. He's not going to stroke a check, too. He'll just want the whole film.
Well, that equals cash, because if he's donating the marketing time, he could be selling that advertising time to Procter & Gamble or anyone else.
Well, we valued his marketing at $10 million. So we're going to be on the air on American Idol, and So You Think You Can Dance. He's going to have the people up on stage and showcase it during the show. And I mean, you got to think that week at the box office would be pretty nice. just from that marketing alone. So
I would think so, but
Yeah.
if he's stroking that at 10 million, the 800,000 is just,
I know. I get that question all the time. I haven't got an answer for that one. But the budget is 800,000. We know that Sony or Miramax or what have you, once the film is complete, will buy the film. So everyone gets their money back and a profit at that point. So that we do know.
what's the timetable on that?
We'll be done post-production, let's say December 1st. Everything will be complete in the can. And we go to the festivals. And what we do in the festivals, we're actually sitting down with Sony, Miramax, Universal, and saying, make us your best offer. So,
When do the investors get their first check?
yes, I would say by the end of the year. The minute we sit down with Sony, they say, okay, here's the offer. They give you 50% up front, whatever that offer is. And then once they launch the film, they pay you the other 50%. So the minute the film is in the can, we have the meeting set and we get half the money up front. And then once the film's launched, we get the other balance. Yep. It's pretty quick. Yeah. But again, that's why I want to showcase the track records. The track records of the people on there, are pretty impeccable. So.
In my experience in the angel investing world, investors put dollars at risk in exchange for some degree of control. But control is useless if you don't know anything about what you're controlling. That certainly applies to me as it would pertain to the production of a movie or a soundtrack or anything in the performing arts, because I know absolutely nothing about it. Which means that control to me would be useless, which means that there's no way I would put my money at risk, because
Right.
even if you gave me control, it wouldn't have anything of meaning to me. The story that I want to tell you has to do with a movie production. 2 weeks ago, a movie debuted called Act of Valor. And it's a movie about real live Navy SEALs and their exploits in real life situations. The day it debuted, the two people that put it all together appeared on the morning news shows and were asked, predictably enough, why it was that they made this an independent film instead of going to a studio, Hollywood studio. And the response was that they didn't want Hollywood's political agenda to be reflected in their movie. And as a result, they raised all the money on their own. They contracted with real live, currently serving Navy SEALs to star in the movie during their off time. And they took it to market completely by themselves. I haven't seen the initial box office numbers.
Pretty good.
I went the day that it opened. Very good movie, highly entertaining. And I was so entertained that I sat through the credits because I was fascinated as to who took the financial risk. I figured it'd show up somewhere, and it did. As the credits are rolling, you get down to the very end of it, and it says, in association with Tom Clancy.
Ah, okay.
And that made perfect sense to me, because what they did is identify people that had an affinity for the story that they wanted to tell, that they could go to, surrender a degree of control in exchange for the money, and still know that they're going to end up with a product that they want to end up. And my advice to you would be, take that act of valor lesson and make your presentation to people that are knowledgeable about music, about dance, about movies, because that's where you come up with your money. And any degree of control that they extract in exchange for putting dollars at risk, you'll gladly give them, and they will gladly accept because they'll know what to do with it.
Right, good point.
Unlike people like us.
My piece of advice, I have nothing to do with the movie industry, but I did attempt to be a franchisor at one point. And being a franchisor, you're trying to bring people's money into a situation where they're buying your expertise, and there's a whole lot of rules when it comes to raising money from franchisees, and I know there's a whole lot of rules when it comes to raising capital. I'm really concerned about your presentation is going to give you legal liability, because your presentation shows a worst case scenario, and
Yeah.
I have invested in movies, and the worst case scenario is I got zero, and if I would have had your presentation, I would have been suing you, you know, for the money that I lost.
You know, it makes sense. But that's why I wanted to give you the feedback tonight. The feedback, number one, legalities. That's one thing I need to change. I don't want to be getting sued. And number two, go after people that would actually have a passion for this type of genre. So that's good.
Everybody give Mark a good hand. Big, nice presentation.
If you would like to present your business to the boardroom and get advice and perhaps even an investment, visit www.boardroomlessons.com.